You've probably been told that waking up in the middle of the night is just part of getting older, that it's normal, that you should accept it, maybe take a melatonin and try to go back to sleep. And look, there's a grain of truth in there. Sleep architecture does change as we age. You spend less time in deep sleep. You're more sensitive to noise and light. Those things are real. But here's what that explanation misses entirely. For a huge number of people over 50, the reason they're waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and lying there wide awake with their mind suddenly racing has nothing to do with sleep architecture. It has to do with cortisol. Specifically, a cortisol spike that's being triggered by a blood sugar crash happening in the middle of the night. And once you understand that mechanism, the solution becomes surprisingly obvious. So that's what this video is about. Why your cortisol is spiking while you sleep, what that's actually doing to your body and your health over time, and the one simple thing, 1 tablespoon of something that's probably already in your kitchen, that can interrupt that cycle and help you sleep through the night. Let's get into it. Your brain never actually goes to sleep. Even when the rest of you is out cold, your brain is burning through fuel all night long, cataloging memories, running repairs, processing emotions. It's one of the most energy-hungry organs in your body, burning through glucose constantly, and it has a backup system for keeping that fuel supply steady through the night. That backup system is your liver. Your liver stores glucose in a compressed form called glycogen. Think of it as a battery that slowly drains overnight, releasing just enough fuel to keep your brain running without you needing to eat anything. Under normal circumstances, that battery holds enough to get you through a full night of sleep without a problem. Here's where it breaks down for a lot of people over 50. If you eat dinner early, say 6 or 7 o'clock, and you don't eat anything after that, your liver has already been drawing down that glycogen supply for 4 or 5 hours before you even go to bed. By 2 or 3 in the morning, the battery is running low. And when that happens, your brain does something very specific. It sends out an alarm signal. That alarm comes in the form of cortisol and adrenaline, both of them. Your body releases these stress hormones specifically to trigger a process called gluconeogenesis. Basically, your body breaking down muscle tissue to manufacture new glucose from scratch because the liver supply is running out. This is a survival mechanism. It works. But the side effect is that a cortisol and adrenaline surge at 3 a.m. doesn't exactly keep you sleeping. You wake up. Your mind starts racing. You feel weirdly alert and anxious even though you're exhausted. You lie there staring at the ceiling and you can't figure out why. Sound familiar? And here's what makes this particularly important for people in their 50s and beyond. A study out of Penn State College of Medicine that monitored sleep and hormone levels in older adults found that those with more nighttime disruption showed significantly elevated cortisol, and that cortisol was specifically tied to the loss of deep, slow-wave sleep, not just lighter sleep, the restorative kind. A separate large-scale study tracking over 650 older adults confirmed the same pattern. More nighttime waking correlated directly with higher cortisol the following day. This isn't a one-off finding. It's consistent across the literature. Now here's where I need you to really hear this, because most people treat nighttime waking as an inconvenience, something you push through, and I understand that when you've been dealing with it for a year or two, you start to normalize it. You stop fighting it. You just accept that this is how you sleep now. But here's what's actually happening on the inside while you lie there at 3 a.m. Every time cortisol spikes during the night, it pulls you out of the deep sleep stages where your immune system does its repair work, where your brain flushes out the waste products that accumulate during the day, the same buildup that, over time, researchers have linked to cognitive decline, where your cardiovascular system gets its most significant recovery window, where your cells actually regenerate. Miss that window enough nights in a row and it compounds. 6 months of disrupted sleep looks different than 1 bad night. A year looks different still. People don't connect the dots. The fatigue that won't lift no matter how early you go to bed, the mental fog that gets a little thicker every few months, the immune system that can't quite keep up, the blood pressure creeping up despite doing everything right. They chalk it all up to aging. Some of it is, but a significant piece of it is the sleep, and a significant piece of the sleep is the cortisol. And the cortisol, for a lot of people, traces right back to blood sugar running low in the middle of the night. That chain is fixable. That's the whole point of this video. Now here's the good news, and this is actually the part that surprised me when I first looked into it. The fix for a blood sugar crash at 3 a.m. is logically making sure your liver doesn't run out of fuel in the first place. And the most elegant way to do that, the one that's been used for centuries across dozens of cultures before anyone understood the mechanism, is 1 tablespoon of raw honey taken about 30 minutes before bed. Now wait, I know what just happened in your head. Honey? Before bed? Isn't that sugar? Won't that spike my blood sugar? Let me actually explain why this is different, because this is where most people's intuition leads them in the wrong direction. Raw honey contains a very specific ratio of 2 sugars, glucose and fructose, roughly 50-50. And that combination matters enormously in terms of how your liver processes it. The glucose portion moves quickly. It produces a mild, gentle rise in blood sugar, which triggers a small insulin response. But here's what the fructose does, and this is the key. The fructose portion is taken up almost exclusively by the liver, where it does 2 critical things. It restocks liver glycogen directly, and it actually helps regulate how efficiently the liver absorbs and stores that glucose. So instead of a sharp spike and crash, you get a slow, steady replenishment of the exact fuel your liver needs to keep your brain running smoothly through the night. The result? Your liver's battery stays topped up. The brain doesn't send out the emergency alarm. Cortisol and adrenaline don't spike at 2 a.m. You stay asleep. Actually, let me be a little more precise here. It's not that honey completely eliminates cortisol. Cortisol naturally rises toward early morning as part of your normal wake cycle. What raw honey appears to do is prevent the premature, panic-driven cortisol surge that happens specifically because of a blood sugar crash. That's the one that's waking you up. There's also a secondary mechanism at play. Raw honey contains small amounts of tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin and melatonin. And the mild insulin response from honey's glucose helps shuttle tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier more efficiently, since insulin clears other competing amino acids from the bloodstream. More tryptophan reaching your brain means more material for your body to produce melatonin, your primary sleep hormone. So you're getting a fuel supply benefit and a sleep hormone benefit at the same time. And the research is catching up to what traditional medicine figured out long ago. A 2024 review published in PubMed specifically examining honey as a functional food for sleep disorders concluded that honey's unique composition makes it a genuinely promising option for improving sleep patterns, noting its soothing effects and multiple potential mechanisms of action. And a clinical trial run out of the University of Saskatchewan directly compared raw honey to melatonin supplements in people with poor sleep. Their preliminary findings showed honey was safe and effective for improving sleep quality, performing comparably to melatonin with no adverse effects reported. That second one is worth sitting with, comparable to melatonin. Without the next-day grogginess, without the dependency concerns, without the supplement aisle price tag, 1 tablespoon of something that's been in kitchens for thousands of years. Now I want to spend a moment on something that might seem like a small detail but really isn't, because not all honey is the same. And if you go to a regular grocery store and grab the first bear-shaped bottle you see, there's a reasonable chance it won't do much for you at all. The vast majority of commercial honey on store shelves has been heavily processed. It's been heated to high temperatures to prevent crystallization and extend shelf life. It's been ultra-filtered to make it clear and visually appealing. And in the process, most of the enzymes, antioxidants, and trace compounds that give raw honey its functional properties get stripped out. What you're left with is essentially flavored sugar syrup, which, if you're eating it before bed, hoping to support your liver glycogen, is not going to behave the same way. Raw honey, and I mean genuinely raw, unfiltered, minimally processed honey, is a completely different product. It contains active enzymes. It retains its full antioxidant profile. It has that characteristic slight cloudiness or crystallization that processed honey has had filtered away. And it still contains the trace compounds, including that small amount of tryptophan and the naturally occurring antioxidants that may contribute to its sleep-supporting effects. So when you're buying honey for this purpose, look for the word raw on the label. Look for unfiltered or unprocessed. Local honey from a farmer's market or health food store is often your best bet, and you're supporting local beekeepers, which is never a bad thing. Manuka honey, if you can find it at a reasonable price, is another excellent option. Buckwheat honey has also shown up in sleep research specifically and tends to have one of the highest antioxidant contents of any honey variety. If the honey is perfectly clear, uniformly liquid, and was the cheapest option on the shelf, it's probably been processed. Set it aside for cooking and get something raw for this protocol. One more thing while we're here. Dosage. You don't need a lot. 1 tablespoon is the sweet spot for most people, taken about 30 minutes before you go to sleep. You can eat it straight off the spoon, stir it into a small amount of warm water, or add it to a caffeine-free herbal tea. Don't add it to boiling water though. Heat above about 40 degrees Celsius starts to degrade the enzymes. Warm is fine. Hot is counterproductive. That's it. That's the whole protocol. Now I want to be straight with you before we go any further. If you have a diagnosed sleep disorder, sleep apnea, or you're managing blood sugar issues or diabetes, talk to your doctor before trying this. Honey is gentle, but adding any sugar source before bed needs to be considered in the context of your full health picture. This isn't a replacement for medical care, but for the large number of people over 50 who fall asleep just fine but can't stay asleep, who wake up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. with their mind suddenly racing, who feel exhausted in the morning despite going to bed at a reasonable hour, the cortisol blood sugar mechanism is a very real and very underdiagnosed piece of the puzzle, and addressing it with something as simple and low risk as raw honey is absolutely worth trying. Here's why it matters beyond just feeling rested. Sleep is when your body does its most important repair work. Every system in your body, immune, cardiovascular, neurological, has a recovery window that only opens during deep sleep. Every night that you wake up at 3 a.m. and lie there for an hour, that window gets shorter. Over months and years, that adds up in ways you can feel but often can't pinpoint. The fatigue that won't lift, the foggy thinking, the slow recovery when you get sick. These aren't separate problems. They're often the same problem. A sleep cycle that keeps getting interrupted before the real work is done. So here's what to do tonight. Pick up some raw honey, ideally from a health food store or farmer's market, anything clearly labeled raw and unfiltered. Take 1 tablespoon about 30 minutes before bed. Give it at least 5 to 7 nights before you judge results. Sleep shifts don't always happen on day 1, but most people who stay consistent notice a real difference within the first week. And one last thing. Keep a small jar on your nightstand. If you wake up tonight before you've had a chance to try this, a teaspoon right then can help take the edge off the cortisol spike and make it easier to drift back. It sounds almost too simple. Most things that actually work do. If this was useful, subscribe. I cover this kind of thing every week. The mechanisms your body actually runs on and the simple things you can do to work with them instead of against them. Start tonight.